Hello, everyone. My name is Hussein, and today we're going to be talking about the Flint water crisis. The water crisis in Flint, Michigan, which was a terrible instance of environmental injustice that occurred in the city of Flint, Michigan, and caused people all over the country to feel angry and shocked. The examples presented here to illustrate the nature of public health, environmental policies, and the social inequality. First, let's investigate the history of the event as well as the moral questions and the possible causes. Well, now let's start with the background information. The water crisis in Flint began in 2014 when the city of Flint made the decision to save money by switching its water sources from Lake Huron to Flint River. On the other hand, not enough water treatment and control measures were in place, which resulted in lead from old pipes being introduced into the drinking water supply. Now, people began to report that the water they were drinking smelled so bad. It's like imagine you're at home and you want to drink water, but the water that you see is like different than the water that you drink. It smells bad, it's not good, and it was discolored as well and it was harmful to their health. This was especially true for those who lived in neighborhoods like the low income people, which was very unfair. And officials from the city, the state agencies, and the Environmental Protection Agency, and the residents of Flint, and the medical professions, and the groups are the primary groups that were involved in this situation. Now, so the ethical issues at play. So, everyone has the right to safe drinking water. The water crisis in Flint prompts us to give serious consideration to the fundamental human right to drink water. To drink water that is both safe and clean. The failure to conduct water quality tests had a more significant impact on economically disadvantaged and communities which were already struggling to make ends meet under the circumstances. And the second thing is environmental justice. The crisis sheds light on the systematic problems of the environmental injustice, with communities of color and low income individuals being targeted the most by environmental hazards, and got a response from the government, or wants a response. The fact that the decision was made to switch water sources without taking sufficient um, ideas and like thinking about what could happen and demonstrate that the welfare of vulnerable groups is not being taken into consideration is something that is so bad. And accountability of the government, both accountability and transparency of the government, have the potential to have adverse effects on morality because the government took an excessive amount of time to respond and minimize the concerns of people. The crisis became even more severe. People's faith in the institutions was damaged as a result of this. And not just that, it had some health effects. Consuming water that is like not good to drink is something that is so serious. Like imagine you drink some water, it's like not even good. So it had a serious risk to people's health, and especially for children, because children, that they don't have as strong as a body as us. So yeah, these risks included development delays and long-term health effects, and it had some other effects as well. And these health risks were not taken into consideration as well. So why? Then there's these ethical questions that arise regarding the public health over cost-cutting measures. And for me, I have a strong disagreement with the actions and inactions of the government officials and the agencies that were responsible for the water crisis in Flint. This was a clear instance of environmental injustice and systematic that violated fundamental human rights and caused a lot of stuff as well. So this was a clear instance of environmental injustice and systematic that violated fundamental human rights. And the way that could not be very good, it was so bad. And also, there was actually a warranty for the people to before they start working. It was careless ignorance of public health. The decision to switch water sources without taking appropriate control measures in spite of warnings and evidence of the stuff that were going around, it showed and demonstrated the careless ignorance of public health and safety. And unfair effects on groups. The crisis in Flint had a bad impact on communities, a very, very bad impact, especially those with like low income and the minority of population, which made pre-existing social and economic injustice as well as environmental wrongs even more severe. And the lack of oversight from the government. The Government Protection Agency, EPA, and the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, along with other government agencies, failed to perform their duties in order to safeguard the public's health and ensure that regulations were heard. By failing to take prompt and effective action, the situation became even more dire, and the residents' suffering continued for a longer period of time. And objections. There are those who might argue that the choice to switch water sources was the correct one due to the fact that was cost effective or because of technical issues. However, the pursuit of cost-cutting measures should never come at the expense of public health and safety, particularly when those measures have a greater impact on communities that are already in charge. One of the primary responsibilities of the government is to ensure the safety of its citizens, and any carelessness or disregard for this obligation cannot be justified. One type of people thought that condensed water crisis in Flint was not the result of bad actions or like careless actions, but rather it was a technical issue or a lack of financial resources. However, despite the fact that issues with like bad fracture, infrastructure, and lack of funds may have played a role, this does not mean that the government officials are exempt from the responsibility of prioritizing the health and safety of general public. In addition, the argument that the crisis occurred as a result of an effective government does not take into account the numerous warning signs and the red flags that were either disgraded or minimized by the government, there were numerous opportunities that could have provided assistance. But, however, decisive actions was delayed, or it was not taken at all from time to time. So it is a possibility that some um, people that will argue that blaming only the government officials for the problems that are occurring in oversimplification of the actual issues that are occurring. For example, cities have not been investing in their infrastructure for a considerable amount of time, and racism is part of society. So it is essential to have a thorough understanding of these larger factors. However, this does not in any way diminish the responsibility of those individuals who are directly responsible for the crisis. There are also those who might question whether or not it is even possible to find immediate solution to the crisis and the effects it will have in the long run. To ensure that people living in Flint are better in a better position, it is important that the solution be resolved as soon as possible, despite the fact that doing so well will require a significant amount of time and financial resources and some effort by the working people in the government and many factors. uh it should be done anyways. It should have. Although there may be a number of problems and issues associated with water crisis in Flint, the primary moral remains those to those who have been harmed by environmental injustice in Flint and must be given justice. And government officials and agencies must be held accountable for their errors. It is only going to make things worse for the people who are affected by the crisis. If any attempts are made to avoid taking responsibility or to minimize the severity of the crisis, we should probably take and see additional point of views. And I strongly believe that the water crisis in Flint was caused by environmental injustice and systematic failure on the part of government agencies and officials too. A lot of evidence shows that people in Flint were careless, didn't care about the government in Flint was careless and didn't care about public health and hurt the communities more than they hurt others. A counter argument could say that blaming only government officials for the crisis oversimplifies the many complex factors that are led to it. The problem was caused by a number of things, such as problems with the bad work and lack of investment in the past, which is not something that I would say the best reason, because the investment should be only for the people. It shouldn't be a reason to say, oh, I failed because of the bad investment. Then you should have not done it in the first place. You got to think about it first. However, it is important to remember that the government officials were supposed to put public health and safety first, but they didn't. And another argument against could be that dealing with crisis and its long-term effects, it's a difficult job that needs a lot of resources and teamwork. This is without a doubt the case, but that doesn't mean that the government officials don't need to act quickly and decisively to protect the people of Flint. It got worse for those who were affected because of slow responses and bad measurements. Other people might say that blaming only government officials does not take into account the part that the bigger picture structural issues play, like racism that is built into the system and difference in income. Nothing the systematic government official less responsible for the crisis they directly caused by being careless and doing nothing. And holding the government officials responsible for their mistake is important for getting justice for the people of Flint who have been hurt by environmental injustice. Even there may be problems and questions about the Flint water crisis, they should not try to avoid responsibility or downplay how bad the crisis is. Doing so will only make the people who are already suffering worse and make it harder to stop similar tragedies from happening um, even more. In, in conclusion, the water crisis in Flint serves as something that would make us remember that in the long term. Remember how bad it is and the environmental injustice and how it could have that, as well as the urgency with which systematic changes are required to prevent similar tragedies from occurring in the future. In order to ensure that the people of Flint receive justice, those responsible must be held accountable. Damages they must have been paid. All of the issues that had the part of it had some part of it should be resolved. But I am grateful that you guys are listening, and I hope that I explained everything very well. And hopefully in the future we can take some actions even better, and that only would bring us more like justice for everyone, and there is no reason that people should suffer from bad stuff like that anymore. And I just want to thank everyone for listening, and thank you. You should have a wonderful day. Thank you.